All right, everybody. Jumping into our last section, Unit 8, the law of cosines. Okay, so let's think back to what we know about law signs, right? And we know that we use law signs for non-right triangles, but what helps us know to use law of signs is having that complete opposite ratio, right? So like knowing the angle measure and the side length opposite it. So our setup to solve for side length A in this problem right here would be the sine of 97 over 10 equals the sine of 50 over side lowercase a, right? And so that's what our last kind of video was about, and we covered that a lot already. And then obviously we can find angle C by doing 180 minus 97 minus 50, and once we know angle C, we can find side length C by setting up another ratio, okay? But what if we get a problem like this guy right here and we don't have a complete opposite ratio? So I know angle B is 36. I don't know side B. I know sides opposite A and C, but I don't know angle A or angle C. That is when we have to use the law of cosine. Okay, and so the law of cosine is a longer equation, so we're no longer using a ratio. We are now going to be using a long equation. And the thing to know about this equation is if you're solving for a side, then that side will start your equation off. If you're solving for an angle, the angle will be at the end of your equation. So whatever you're solving for, it's going to be either at the beginning or at the end. Everything in the middle that you plug in, you should know that information. So what I mean by that is, look at this drawing right here. And I'm going to throw the equation up here in a second. But I know angle 36, I know side 7, and I know side 5. So we use the law of cosine formula to solve for side B, the side opposite the angle that we know. Now, we're not using the law of sines, which you're going to use law of cosines, but that means that since we're solving for B, our equation starts with B and ends with angle B. So like I said, whatever you're solving for, it's either going to start in the beginning of your equation or the end. If I'm solving for an angle, the angle goes at the end. If I'm solving for a side, the side I'm trying to solve for goes at the beginning. Okay? So here's kind of how this works. And I'm going to use this little drawing right here to make 3 different equations just so you can see how it differs. Okay? So let's say that I know angle A and I know side B and side C. So notice I'm talking about two sides and an included angle, the angle between the two sides. We should all know that term included by now. It's the angle between the two sides we know. So what I'm going to be solving for is side A. So here's how my formula starts. A squared, so again, I'm solving for A, so see how I'm going to start with the side I'm trying to find? And it's also the side opposite the angle that I know. Equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of A. Whew, that's a long formula, right? And so here's what's important to know about this equation. If you're solving for a side, your unknown goes in the beginning. The two sides you know get plugged in this middle part right here, and then the angle you know goes in here at the back. And again, this angle is opposite this side. And so this can be moved around, right, based off of what you know. And so here's just another example. If I was trying to solve for side B and I knew angle A, and I also knew the length of C and A, notice how my formula changes. Everything I know is in the middle. What I'm solving for is at the beginning or at the end. Right? So there's 2 different variations that you're looking at. There's a variation where you know the angle and 2 sides that are making it, the included angle, or you know all 3 sides and you're trying to find an angle. Okay, and we're going to do examples of both of those types of problems. And then the final variation is if we move to the C, right? Again, notice that whatever the sides that we know, those go in the middle, right? And then the side you don't know goes at the beginning, or the angle you don't know goes at the end. And so guys, I promise this formula will all make sense once we start examples. It kind of does, it's kind of like hard to understand when it's so abstract like this. But once we start plugging the numbers in, we'll be good to go, okay? So let's take a look at this problem right here, right? And there's the 3 different variations. Now this might be confusing, so as far as the 3 different variations, but we'll see if we can make it work. As I explain it, it'll make sense though. So as we look at this problem, all right, if I wanted to solve for everything, we could do that, all right? But let's just focus on finding side B, because as I look at my triangle, I have side length 5, side length 7, I know angle B, and that's opposite of side B, okay? So since we have the 2 sides and an included angle, we want to find the side opposite the angle we know, right? And so here's what my formula would look like, right? So again, I said I'm starting with the side I'm trying to find equals the 2 sides that I know squared minus, oops, I forgot the 2 in here. There should be a 2. So b squared equals 5 squared plus 7 squared minus 2 times 5 times 7 times the cosine of 36. Okay, so again, notice that in every time you do this problem, there will never be a variable where I've highlighted right now. Okay, there will always be numbers plugged in. The only place you'll have a variable will either be in the front or at the very end. That's it. So as we do this problem, let's go ahead and multiply some stuff out. B squared equals 25 plus 49 minus 2 times 5 is 10, 10 times 7 is 70, times the cosine of 36. Now we're going to wait to do this till the very, very end, that's 70 times cosine of 36, for the same reason that we practice using ANS, is because we don't want to round until the very end, okay? So I'm going to do 25 plus 49. That gets me 74. So b squared equals 74 minus 70 times the cosine of 36. Okay. Now here's where your use of the calculator is going to be important. Now the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to do 70 times cosine 36. And again, that's going to give me a big long number, like 56.6311896062. But again, we don't want to round that. So without clearing that, I'm going to do 74 minus ANS. So 74 minus my previous calculation. That gets me 17.3688. Okay, so again, I'm getting this, and then it's 17.3688103938. I'll write it all out just so you can see it. But then now I'm going to do the square root of that. So I access my square root function in my calculator. For most of it's going to be second, and then the x squared button. You should be able to see the square root button written on your calculator. And then I'm going to do ANS one more time. So on my calculator, I have second ANS, which means I'm taking the square root of this guy right here, and that comes out to 4.16759, or 4.2. So our missing side length is 4.2. And this is why I said, guys, that being able to use the ANS function and being handy with your calculator is going to give you the most accurate answer. Now, if I rounded this, and then I rounded this, and I took the square root, I'm going to get something close, but it's going to be off. And notice that when we get to 4.2, 4.2 is different than 4.4 or 3.8, okay? So it's very important to practice this using this ANS feature in your calculator, okay? Let's do another one. All right, so here's another problem. All right, we have side 7 and side 10. We are given angle 73. So the side that we are trying to find now is side C. So here's our formula. C squared equals, it doesn't matter what order I put these sides in, 7 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 times 7 times 10 times the cosine of the angle that's opposite the side I'm trying to find. So the cosine of 73. So once we get to this point, we're going to multiply everything out. C squared equals 49 plus 100 minus 7 times 10 is, or 2 times 7 is 14, times 10 is 140, cosine of 73. So remember, we're saving this guy. We're not going to do anything yet. So now we get C squared equals 149 minus 140 cosine of 73. So the first thing I would do is do 140 times the cosine of 73. That gets me 40.93, big long number. And I'm going to use my 149 minus A and S. So now I get C squared equals 108, and then lots of stuff, right? And then one more time, I'm going to do the square root A and S. Square root A and S. So that gets me 10.4. And that is our missing side length. Okay, so again, using the A and S function, super huge. Okay, and guys, I'll see if I can make a video of what I'm talking about on the calculator. Okay, now let's do a problem where we're going to find an angle. And so I kind of like these problems because I can technically pick any angle that I want to solve for first. So bigger extent, guys, is technically I'm supposed to, like in years past where I'm seeing people every day, is I'd say solve the triangle, right? And that would mean find all the missing information. We're not going to really jump into that. I'm only going to ask you to perform the law of cosine. But if I ask you to find the whole thing, you do law cosine first, and then you do law sine. So in this case, let's just solve for angle A. Okay, so now, because I'm solving for angle A, I start with the side opposite my angle in my equation. So it would be 16 squared equals 9 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 times 9 times 10 times the cosine of A. And as you can see, probably where we're going with this, we're going to have to use inverse here at the very end. But first, let's multiply everything out. 16 squared is 256. 9 squared is 81. 10 squared is 100. 9 times 2 is 18. 18 times 10 is 180. Cosine of A. Let's subtract the 81 and the 100 to the left side. So 256 minus 81 minus 100 gets us 75. So 75 equals negative 180 cosine of A. Now I'm going to divide by negative 180. So now I have cosine of A equals 75 divided by negative 180. And now we're to the point where we can use our inverse. So inverse cosine of 75 over negative 180 equals our angle measure, or A degrees. So inverse cosine of 75 divided by negative 180 gets us 114.6. So guys, you have to include that negative sign. So my advice is when you do this in the calculator, do inverse cosine. So you get this, parentheses 75 divided by, now not subtract 180, there's a negative symbol right next to your enter, negative 180. Enter it in your calculator just like that. Okay? And so angle A equals 114.6 degrees. Got time for one more. This video is getting kind of long, and then I'll make the video for the how I do this in the calculator. Okay. So now let's look at this one. Let's go ahead and solve for angle C. Okay. So that means we're starting with our 12. 12 squared equals 7 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 7 times 9 times the cosine of C. Multiply everything out. 144 equals 49 plus 81. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 times 9 is 126. Cosine of C. Subtract the 49 and the 81 to the left. 144 minus 49 minus 81 is 14. So 14 equals negative 126 cosine of C. Divide by negative 126. So cosine of C equals 14 over negative 126. Last step, inverse cosine of 14 over negative 126 is going to get us our angle measure at C. Inverse cosine, parentheses, 14 divided by negative 126, close my parenthesis, I get 96.4 degrees. So C equals 96.4 degrees. So again, guys, notice I'm not using my calculator. I'm not doing any type of trig calculation until I get the variable all by itself. Check out the video I'm going to make regarding the calculator. Let me know if you have any questions.